Being able to rise above childhood trauma is an impressive accomplishment, but so is memorizing nearly all of the Lord of the Rings. Stephen Colbert has done both, and if you have anything to say about it to him, make sure to aim for his good ear. When he was 10 years old, the most eventful thing in Stephen Colbert's life should have been the fact that he was the youngest of 11 children. Unfortunately, that fact was greatly overshadowed by his family experiencing a devastating loss. In September 1974, Eastern Airlines Flight 212, carrying his father, James, and two of his older brothers, Peter and Paul, crashed in a North Carolina cornfield. All three perished in the crash, bursting the bubble of Stephen's idyllic childhood at an all-too-young age. Opening up years later for Oprah, as one does, Colbert talked about how the trauma manifested in a kind of new name or identity for himself.
You have your name, but then you have a secret name.
Yeah.
And that's a name that no one can ever really pronounce, because it's who you are.
Colbert may have had an extremely large family, but at the time of the crash, his other siblings had either gone to college or were engaged in their own lives, leaving young Stephen essentially alone with his mother. While they had each other, both were left occupied with their grief, and each of them wound up caring for each other.
But I also had her to take care of, and it became a very quiet house and very dark.
During this dark period, Colbert recalled to GQ that watching his mother's stoicism in the face of losing two sons and her husband in one fell swoop taught him a lesson he didn't realize he was learning. As he told the publication, "By her example, am I not bitter? By her example, she was not. Broken, yes. Bitter, no." Despite being able to follow his mother's example, the years of the two of them alone in the house wasn't exactly a happy memory. As time passed, Colbert was even able to look back and realize that the relationship with his mother at that time was unhealthy and codependent. With the two so committed to looking out for each other, young Stephen didn't get to partake in typical carefree childhood pursuits that other children were caught up in.
But I had certainly a different point of view than the children around me.
But though it came out of necessity, something beautiful came out of Stephen and his mother's relationship. As part of his care for his mother, Colbert realized that a surefire way to comfort her was to make her laugh. As he reflected years later on the Howard Stern show, the place everybody goes to reflect, Colbert said, "I think there's no doubt that I do what I do because I wanted to make her happy." Young Colbert's way of processing was retreating, not just into himself, but into the worlds of countless books. In his interview with GQ, he revealed that he became the closest thing to a reading addict, completing a book a day and spending every bit of his allowance on even more stories to lose himself in. To be frank, reading is far from the worst thing a young man could turn to in a time of crisis. But despite it being an acceptable form of distraction, Colbert said that years later he realized that he hadn't really allowed himself to grieve such a huge loss. When Colbert went away to college, however, the depth of that loss began to literally eat away at him, revealing to Oprah that he'd lost around 50 pounds during his freshman year.
I was just green. I was just so sad about it. I finally had time to sort of, I suppose, be alone with the idea
Yeah, to
that they were
process
gone.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Despite all the years that had passed, the grief that he felt about the deaths of his father and older brothers never truly left him. As he mused in a 2012 interview with Playboy, "Grief is its own thing. It's not like it's in me and I'm going to deal with it. It's a thing and you have to be okay with its presence. If you try to ignore it, it will be like a wolf at your door." With all this talk of loss, it's good to know that Stephen Colbert's childhood wasn't simply about processing grief. It was also about getting botched surgery. Those who have stared at Colbert's head long enough might have noticed that his right ear bends outward at a different angle than his left. This was neither a birth defect or put on for comedy's sake. It was due to a botched surgical procedure on his eardrum as a child, resulting in him being completely deaf in the ear.
This is just a prop. Doesn't work at all.
So there's parts missing?
It's all gone. Nothing in here.
Really?
Hello. Absolutely.
But like losing 3 members of his family did, the medical mishap helped push Colbert into a comedy career. Early in his life, young Stephen wanted to be a marine biologist, but the surgery put the ixnay on that plan. Speaking to the Post and Courier, Colbert explained, "Now I can't get my head wet. I mean, I can, but I can't really scuba dive or anything like that, so that killed my marine biology hopes." While the majority of us will never know the stunning pain of losing multiple loved ones to a plane crash or our hearing to a surgeon who's bad at their job, feelings of anxiety are much more relatable. After shifting his career plans from marine biologist to actor/comedian, Colbert found the levels of success that many actors reach, specifically, not much. As he later told Rolling Stone, on top of a scuffling career, he was also dealing with adjusting to married life, having recently married his wife Evelyn. Colbert recalled dealing with panic attacks as the jobs continued to stay away, recalling times when Evelyn would return home from work and ask what he'd done that day. And I'd say, "You're looking at it, just tight circles around the couch." A prescription for Xanax didn't help, but fortunately he was able to find something that gave him a temporary reprieve, performing on stage. He summed up the cutting-edge treatment by saying, "Oh, you feel fine when you're out here, and then as soon as I got off stage, I just crumble into a ball again." Any fans who've been watching Colbert over the years will tell you two things about the man are undeniably true. He's obsessed with the Lord of the Rings, and he's a devout Catholic.
Because I cannot remove that from me any more than you can remove the marble from a statue. That's just who I am.
But even the most devoted followers of religion have periods of doubt in their life, and losing 3 of your family members at once sure will bring about some doubt. In an interview for the podcast Faith and Focus, he discussed being 22 years old and turning away from his faith.
Picking my liver and was sort of convicted of my own atheism and had lost my faith in God.
Then one day, someone on a Chicago street handed him a small copy of the Psalms and Proverbs from the New Testament, and in it was a glossary that had suggested verses addressing anxiety. After reading a passage taken from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which essentially insisted there was no point in worrying, Colbert felt lifted from the burden of his anxiety. He claimed that he stood on the street on a bitterly cold day, read the sermon in its entirety, and has never looked back. During his time on the Colbert Report, Stephen Colbert rarely broke away from his conservative persona that he used to parody real-life politics. But when his mother, Lorna Elizabeth Tuck, passed away at the age of 92, he dropped the charade for a bit to honor her memory. It only seemed right, as she wasn't simply responsible for, giving him life and love and raising him. She was also the one who instilled in him a love of theater thanks to her own past training to be an actor, and eventually helped put him on the same career path. During his de facto eulogy, Colbert recalled how she taught her children to do stage falls by pretending to faint on the kitchen floor, but also made sure to point out that her true calling in life was to be a mother.
We were the light of her life, and she let us know it till the end.
At the episode's end, he offered one final tribute when he performed a pretend faint, just like she taught him all those years ago. After retiring his character Stephen Colbert introduced a new character when he took over as the host of The Late Show in 2015. That character, of course, was Stephen Colbert, except, the real Colbert. After returning from a hiatus, Colbert informed his audience that when they saw him last 3 weeks earlier, he wasn't feeling all that great, and later that night he found out why. After waking up with agonizing abdominal pain, Colbert gritted his way through to tape 2 shows back-to-back, but upon wrapping up the last episode, including a bit of dancing with celebrity chef Jose Andres, he couldn't soldier his way through anymore. After not listening to his body all day, he finally listened to his wife and went to the hospital, where he got a grim prognosis.
They scanned me. It turns out my appendix had already burst. They said when they opened me up, it was like they'd shot John Wick 5 down there.
Fortunately, the surgeons were on top of it, removing the faulty organ and cleaning out the infected area, leaving Colbert in a much better condition and with a new respect for painkillers.
I am not here to condone the use of morphine. I'm just asking if anyone brought some tonight.
Despite having the top ratings in his time slot, Colbert drew the ire of President Donald Trump for some strong opinions about how the president was doing. After calling for Colbert to be fired numerous times, the Donald got his wish when CBS's parent company Paramount needed approval from the Federal Communications Commission for a deal to be required by Skydance Media. In addition to his criticism of Trump, Colbert had also been critical of how Paramount bent its knee during a lawsuit over a 60 Minutes interview. In what can only be described as coincidental timing, CBS announced that they were not going to renew The Late Show when Colbert's contract ended in 2026. CBS insisted it was due to the show's poor ratings, which, as we've established, wasn't true.
Yeah, I share your feelings.
But as he once reflected on All There Is with Anderson Cooper, Colbert was once walking down a street and suddenly became overwhelmed with gratitude for the pain that he'd experienced. While that may seem counterintuitive, he explained that if one feels true gratitude for the good things in life, one must be equally grateful for the bad, summing it up by saying, "If I can be grateful for my life, am I also grateful for this? Yes, I am also grateful for this."